I can't stop thinking about like what this freaking line is. And obviously I could just find out if I read the book, but I haven't. So hello, my name's Ketevan. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the 23 books I'm most excited for 2023. I'm actually not sure how other people have been doing it exactly. These aren't necessarily new releases. Actually, I can tell you right now, none of them are going to be new releases. They're all books from my bookshelf, and they're all books that I do not have access to an audiobook version of them. The audiobook version basically doesn't exist. So these are all books that might have been languishing the past year or few years, depending. Despite that, these are the books that I'm actually genuinely excited to read, and I just want to mostly remind myself of that. And, you know, part of this year I'm going to be doing a challenge that involves reading primarily, hopefully, from my own bookshelf. So this is sort of like in the spirit of that challenge, to sort of get me thinking about which books I actually want to be able to pull quickly and start reading in paper copies. So I divided these books up into roughly 3 different sections. The first one I'm going to do is short story collections. The next one is world literature. And then the final one is some nonfiction. So I'll start with the short story collections. So the first book I have here is the book of Tbilisi, City and Short Fiction, edited by Becca Parkinson and Jivansa Jobava. I'm not sure how to say that. And this is published by Com Press. So there's the cover. It's very pretty. So this is just going to be a collection of short stories that are set in Tbilisi, which is the capital city of the Republic of Georgia. That's where my name comes from. It's where my grandfather comes from. I'm excited to read it. I just, you know, haven't gotten around to it. Granted, I got this for my birthday, so it's languished on my shelf for less than 2 months, but still, I'm very excited to read it. And then similarly, also for my birthday, I received My Pen is the Wing of a Bird, new fiction by Afghan women. And does it have an editor? I don't think it has an editor. That's weird. It should have an editor. No, that's weird. I guess not. But anyway, there it is. And similarly, again, just had it for a couple months, but very excited to read it. So looking forward to it. This one has been languishing, and this is Beyond a Satin Sea, Stories from Malta, edited by Terence Portelli. This one is a collection of short stories from Malta, and it has a really interesting mix of more famous authors and less famous authors. But I'm really, really excited to read this, mostly because I want to, I did a very long deep dive trying to find Maltese literature translated into English, of course, and it was very hard, but I'm hoping if I go through this collection and find some authors that I like, that maybe that'll help me narrow it down. Very excited about that one. I'm excited about all of them. I don't need to say that for each and every book, but I probably will, so sorry in advance. Okay, then we have Sisters of the Revolution, a feminist speculative fiction anthology, edited by Anne and Jeff Vandermeer. So again, similarly to the last one, this one has a combination of famous and less famous authors in it. Octavia Butler, Angela Carter, or Ursula Le Guin are the 3 that like pop at me. And I actually picked this up while Anne Novella was visiting me in Paris, and we popped into After 8 Books, which is a publisher but also like an independent bookshop here in Paris. I was so excited to find this because I love speculative fiction. And it's one of the reasons I love Margaret Atwood so much. So it's so nice to be able to see a bunch of different diverse voices in that same genre. So really looking forward to that one, all of them. Okay, and then next I've got Prison Noir. And this is a collection by, or edited rather, by Joyce Carol Oates. And this one is by Akashic Books, which is a press that I think only possibly does this collection of noir stories, and typically they actually use a geographic format. So there's like Paris noir, New York noir. Some of the places, there's like I think dozens and dozens of these books with some of the most random places you can think of. But this is I think the only one they have that's more thematic and not geographic based. So all of the authors of these short stories have been imprisoned at some point in their lives, and I'm not sure that I doubt that all of the stories have to do with prison, although maybe they do because since it's the theme of the book. But anyway, I'm really, really excited to pick this one up. again. And then finally we have Legends of the Caucuses by, again, edited, I think, or no, it's actually, I think, written by David Hunt. So essentially I picked this up because this is really the only source of Georgian folk tales I could find, and it's for the whole Caucasus region, so that includes Azerbaijan and what's the other country? Armenia. So first of all, I panic bought this because I couldn't find a copy of it anywhere except for Abe Books. And I actually first discovered it when I was ordering it from Saki Press. So I was trying to put in an order through them and I was like, oh, I'll add that. That's great. And then they were out of stock. So I was like, oh, great. When the publisher's out of stock, you know that you have to like run and grab it. Otherwise it might disappear. So I kind of panic bought it like maybe a year and a half ago and I still haven't picked it up. I kind of bought it intending only to read the Georgian sections, but now that I'm flipping through it, like, I think I want to just read the whole thing through. And it's actually organized quite interestingly. It's thematically organized, not geographically organized, which I found super interesting. Each story or like tale is clarified which ethnic group or country it might have come from. Now that I'm looking through this, I'm just getting so excited about the whole thing. But basically David Hunt is an academic in this field and he specializes in this region. And so this is sort of like his life's work put together in one book. So it's definitely like gonna be very high quality. I'm super excited about it and I just need to pick it up and start reading a little bit every day. So looking forward to that again. All right, so now we have some world literature. This is actually the largest stack because unfortunately a lot of world literature I guess isn't popular enough for audiobook. I'm not sure. But anyway, so we'll start with The Russian Bride and Groom by Elisa Geneva, translated by Carol Apollonio. So yeah, I don't remember exactly which region it's from, but it's basically not like the Moscow-St. Petersburg region. And it's about a young couple who don't like want to be together, but they can't because their families don't get along. And apparently addresses Islamic radicalization, which I don't think I realized when I picked it out, but that sounds also super interesting. So Bride and Groom. And then we have Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rees. This I've actually, this is her most popular book, I think, but it is, I read a different book by her in college, which I don't remember now the title of, but I thought I should definitely read this one since it's the, you know, the sort of a retelling of Jane Eyre from Mr. Rochester's wife's perspective. So anyway, very excited for this one. And then Eugene Onegin by Alexandra Pushkin, translated by James Fallon. This one is considered the classic of Russian literature, so I definitely want to read it like ASAP. This actually, now that I realize it's in this pile, there is an audiobook on YouTube for it, but I think I've tried it a couple times and it just didn't work for me, so I think I have to read this by myself. But I'm really excited for it. It's kind of an epic poem. Everything's in verse, which is really nice. Like it's told in verse, so I'm really looking forward to. What am I going to say? I keep saying the same thing over and over again, but this is considered like the absolute foundation of Russian literature, so I really want to get to this as soon as possible because I'm hoping to read more of the Russian literature on my shelf for the rest of the year. So next up we have If on a Winter's Night, A Traveler by Italo Calvino, and I actually don't know who the translator is for this one. William Weaver. This one I've read, shoot, I've already forgotten the name of it, but the other famous Calvino book, where he's like Marco Polo and whatever that one's called. I've read that one, so I immediately bought this one because I knew I would like it. This one's considered more experimental. It's like a book within a book somehow, and I kind of don't want to know exactly how it works before diving in. I want to be like, you know, reveal the mystery myself. So I'm hoping to get to this pretty soon while it's still wintry, although it's getting warm kind of fast lately, so I don't know. We'll see. Maybe this is going to be reserved for the end of the year. Next up we have The Private Lives of Trees by Alejandro Zambra, translated by Megan McDowell. This one is so little and I got this so long ago. I don't know why I haven't picked it up. It's like literally 80 pages, I think. So short. And basically it's just like one night this man starts like not hallucinating, but sort of like imagining what his life would be like if his wife left him. So interesting premise. Like I'm super like intrigued and I just need to like pick it up basically. Same thing with this one, Mario Benedetti, Who Among Us, translated by Nick Caster. Super, super tiny, like 90 pages again. Also about a couple that against the odds found love, blah, blah, blah. Except now we're like fast forward into the future and their marriage has begun to fray. So this is from Uruguay. And oh, I should mention that Alejandro Zambra is Chilean, and of course Calvino's Italian, and this guy's Uruguayan. And so again, just to pick it up. So this one is by a South African author who has unfortunately passed away, and he is considered to be one of the greatest South African writers, and he's published maybe 3 or 4 books, and they're all very hard to get a hold of. A lot of them are out of print. So this one is 13 cents, and the author is K. Selo Duker, I think is how you say his name. Very, very excited about this one. This one is about a 12-year-old orphan who is living on the streets in Cape Town. And I mean, as someone who's witnessed many of these children like trying to scrape by and survive, like I'm really looking forward to reading a novel exploring their lives and their thought processes, or this particular character, obviously. So yeah, I'm super excited to get to all of his works, but that one is going to be, I think, the first one I read. So this one is called The Field by Robert Seethaler, I'm not sure how to say his name, and it's translated from the German by Charlotte Collins. And I actually found this one on while I was book shopping in Amsterdam, and I picked it up on a whim because it just sounded so intriguing. The premise is a bunch of different like interconnected stories of that are narrated all by these people in a graveyard. They're all dead and buried in the graveyard, and you're hearing their narration of stories from their lives. So it's just, I'm like so curious to see what he's done with it and how it plays out. And I mean, that cover is like so pretty, if you can see it. It's just like so nice. And I literally have it on my shelf in my bedroom, which is more like for the books that I'm like, oh, I'm going to read really soon. And I've had that on that shelf since I bought it. And I just look at it, I'm like, oh, I really want to read that right now, but I can't, I don't have time. I'm like, I just need to make the time. I need to pick it up and start it, and then I'll be reading it. So similarly, I picked this up now, gosh, more than a year ago in Ireland while I was visiting. And it's also been sitting on that prized bookshelf of like, oh, I'm going to get to you soon. Just hasn't made it. And it's called Line by Niall Burke. It's a dystopic novel, and basically the idea is that this man, his mother, and his girlfriend are all spending their entire lives on this line. And I'm not sure if it's a metaphorical line or a physical line, but basically the idea is that this society, they tell you, you have to stay on line. If you leave the line, you lose your place in the line, and then your life will be over. They don't say how your life will be over, but they're just like told you must stay on line, and they believe it, so they do it. And then his mother dies, and he kind of figures out like, oh, maybe this is actually all BS. And so they basically decide, him and his girlfriend, to like leave the line and like see what happens. So it's like, I can't stop thinking about like what this freaking line is. And obviously I could just find out if I read the book, but I haven't. So that's why I really want to read this one. So this next one is a short story collection. Oh, I guess it should have gone in the first section, but whatever, that's okay. He's Egyptian. He's a Nobel Prize winner. It's The Quarter by Naguib Mahfouz, and apparently these were not published during his life, and they were found after his death and then later compiled and then later translated and so on and so forth, but apparently they're magnificent. And I probably will want to eventually read some of his other works, the things that like, you know, were published when he won the Nobel Prize, things that he's like literally more famous for. But I decided that this very short collection would be a really nice start. And oh, I didn't even notice this in the back. It's like, because I think they were found in his notebooks, so you can see here that this is like kind of like a photocopy of his actual notebooks. So that's really cool. They just have a few pages in the back, but that's really nice. This is like how they found the stories. So that's The Quarter. And then we've got Carbide by Andrei Lubeka. Translated from the Ukrainian by Riley Castigan-Humes. This one I'm super excited for. It says it's a much anticipated response to Voltaire's Candide. Not that I've read Voltaire, but super intrigued. It's exploring the smuggling industry in Ukraine. So I'm really looking forward to this because I can imagine, you know, this was born This was published in 2015, so I can only imagine that the situation has probably changed, but I'm super curious to hear a novelization of that. And then we have The Yearning, another South African novel by Mohale Mashigo, and this one is an exploration of a young woman living in Cape Town. She has a pretty sweet life, and then a secret comes back and starts to unravel her life a bit. So I've just heard very good things about this author, so I just kind of picked this one as my first one from her, and I'm looking forward to reading it. And then last but not least, Elena Knows by Claudia Pinheiro. I think everyone knows this book. I don't need to explain it to you. Francis Riddle translated it from the Spanish. Pinheiro is I believe, yeah, Argentinian, and it's about a disabled woman trying to figure out who murdered her daughter. It's literally been on my list since I bought it. I'm so like needing to read this, but just hasn't happened yet. Alrighty, and last section only has 4 books on it, but they're all very important. They're nonfiction. So the first one is Murder on the Malta Express, Who Killed Daphne Caruana Galizia, and it's by Bonini Delia Sweeney. This one, wow, it's actually like much thicker than I thought. I just got this a little while ago. My mom and I are supposed to be buddy reading this. She started it. I hadn't started it. It depressed her. It's depressing. So we kind of took a pause, but obviously in the new year, we're going to be coming back to it. So if you don't know, Daphne Caruana is a journalist, a Maltese journalist who was assassinated for trying to uncover more of the story of the Panama Papers. I won't go into the whole story here, but obviously when I read this and cover it, you'll learn more from me, and hopefully you're interested enough to pick this book up too, because it's very important. We cannot tolerate assassinating journalists for uncovering you know, crime. So she was an amazing woman, and she's greatly missed, and but luckily now I think most of her murderers are in the process of finding justice. So that is Murder on the Malta Express. This one, again, I bought while I was in Ireland about 1 year and 3 months ago. Sorry for Your Trouble, Anne-Marie Hourihane, The Irish Way of Death. So basically this is sort of like an ethnography of how the Irish deal with death. Actually, on that trip, we were walking around this town. It was a Sunday, but it seemed like the church was very crowded, and there was like just people pouring into the church. And then we realized it was actually a funeral going on, and not just a normal mass. So it kind of got me thinking, like, you know, I have heard that the Irish do funerals a little bit differently, so I bought this because I really want to know more about that. And again, just haven't picked it up, so need to change that. And another sort of ethnography, Coming of Age in Samoa by Margaret Mead. This is like a classic in anthropology. I've had it since college when I was an anthropology major. At the time, I thought it read super densely and super difficult. Like it was actually hard to follow the sentences. But now that I'm flipping through it, it doesn't seem like difficult at all. And I just wonder if I've really grown as a reader, or if maybe it just wasn't the right time and my brain decided to say this is too difficult, and that's why we're not reading it. I don't know. But I did want to read this, and I continue to still want to read this because Margaret Mead was, first of all, one of the first female anthropologists in a very male-dominated field. Still today, it's very male-dominated. She studied children and adolescents, and she discovered that actually in Samoa, adolescence is not stressful. So this whole idea that we have in Western culture of like teenagers being bratty and teenagers, you know, having hormones and they're just so stressed out and they can't help snapping at their parents, and, you know, they're gonna be brats and they're gonna have a rough time and there's nothing we can do about it, just ride it out, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's no biological reason for that. Other cultures do not have that. Adolescence is a time of happiness and joy, and it's a huge developmental transition for them in which they are excited and happy that it's happening. So I've always been curious about this because I mean, you know, not to get into like my own personal life, but I don't feel like my adolescence was particularly difficult. I mean, obviously I had some of the cliched experiences, but it just didn't feel very fraught. And I feel like I'm the only person on the planet. Like, I didn't have a great childhood, like, oh my gosh, the best thing ever. But it just wasn't this like horrible experience where like I just hated my life and I hated the world, and like, I don't know, I just I don't know. So I want to read this to sort of maybe understand more about that. My Body is a Book of Rules. It's the last one by Alyssa Washuta. This is a memoir written by, it's like a very large format. This is a memoir written by one of Sherman Alexi's victims. So she's an Indigenous writer. She's not very well known, and I picked up this book specifically because she was one of his victims. But I'm really excited to read this because it is experimental, I don't think it's experimental writing, but it's an experimental format. So like there's parts, you know, there's sections, there's, you know, different, like, I don't know, just like lots of different things going on in the page where you're not, like when I flip through it, I'm not sure what's happening. And so I kind of almost wouldn't want to read this in audiobook just because I feel like you would miss a lot that's on the page with the formatting and the things like that. So last but not least, My Body is a Book of Rules by Alyssa Washuta, and that is book number 23. I am super excited for all of them. If you've read any of these, let me know. If you like them, hype them up to me, get me excited to read them. If you didn't like them, say nothing, because I don't want anything to dissuade me from reading any of them. And my goal is to read these obviously throughout the year, so it's basically less than 2 per month. I think that's not too hard to do, but we'll see. Come December, I'll realize like, oh, I still have like 5, 10 more left to read, and I don't know what I'll do. If I'll try to smush them in or just carry them over to the next year, who knows? But I'm very, very much looking forward to reading all of these books. So yeah, do you have any reading lists that you want to start the new year with? Like, are you doing anything like this? If you had to pick, you know, 23 books, like how would you, you know, what would you do? Would you pick like books that are on your shelf? Would you pick new releases that you're excited for? I don't know, there's a bunch of different ways to do this list. And if you were doing it, if you have done it, how did you do it? I'm so curious. But anyway, happy reading, and until next time, bye.